S&OP Community weekly podcast, brought to you by Ahmed Khaled and Ahmed Al-Hamamsi from Middle East. Our Global S&OP Community podcast mission is to build a global community from supply chain, marketing, trade marketing, sales and finance all over the world, where everyone's voice could be heard and listened. Every week, we host a new episode with great thought leader in the S&OP industry. We believe that one word, one story, or one conversation could open up the light in the screen of your consciousness and you'll never be the same again. We discuss hot and trending topics with our subject matter experts by asking the right questions that uncover their valuable experience in our show. You can visit our website ahmedkhaled.co. Stay tuned every week with our Global S&OP Community podcast.
Hello, and welcome all our lovely audience. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the 37th episode of the Global S&OP Community. As you all know, it's knowledge you'll not find in books. We are interviewing CEOs, top executives, and here from marketing, from sales, from finance, not only from sales and operation planning background or supply chain. We're going to share. They're going to share their knowledge and experience with you, of course. And today we are having a very special topic and very special guest. And hello to all our guests and to my co-host Ahmed. How are you doing, my friend?
Thank you, Hamamsi. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the marvelous introduction. Actually, today, Hamamsi, I think you have something in the mic. If you can just hold it up a little bit because there is some noise.
Yes.
Okay, I think now it's better, I think.
Yeah.
So again, thank you, Hamamsi, for this amazing introduction. Actually, as you said, today we have a very, very, very unique episode in our podcast. And I'm sure that you can guess why it's a very unique episode. Simply because we have very unique global thought leader. And our guest today will reveal a unique topic that we have never talked about it before in our podcast. And tonight we are going to talk about more into economics, and we'll connect this topic into the business. I will not talk too much about our topic today. Do you know why? I'm sure also that you can guess why, because our guest today is the only one who can cover this special topic with his unique way. And our guest today is a very unique guest. He is Khaled Akl. Khaled Akl is the CEO of Halwani Brothers. And let me give you like a quick introduction about Khaled Akl. Khaled Akl, he is a mechanical engineer by education. His passion of understanding economics pulled him mostly to study economics for 1 year post the graduate level. Khaled worked for the two top FMCG companies in the world, P&G for 14 years and Unilever for 8 years. Khaled was the customer development vice president at Unilever, who managed the route to market inside Unilever globally. And the period between the two companies, he worked with Fairuz International with a different industry and different challenges for 5 years. Then he landed into general management for the past 5 years as a CEO for Regina for pasta and food industry. After that, he joined Al Morai, definitely as a GM for Egypt. And what can I say that Khaled, he has almost 27 years of experience in the business, in terms of sales, marketing, business development, customer and shopper marketing. And definitely what makes Khaled very unique is the ability to share with others and change the world. I can say that he is one of the best and amazing storytellers who can mix a very complicated topic into a blender and put it in a very simple way by his great way of storytelling. So, may I ask you, please, to welcome with us our global thought leader today, Dr. Khaled Akl. Dr. Khaled.
Hello and welcome.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Ahmed. So happy to be with the two of you here. First of all, a small correction here because there are 27 years of experience commercially plus 5 as a general manager or CEO. So in total, it's 32 years.
Wow.
Well, I know that I appear much younger than the actual age, but
Yes,
those are
you do.
32 years of consistent commercial experience. So thanks for the intro. I'm so much happy and pleased, and I feel privileged to be with you and with your respectful audience today.
Thank you so much, Khaled. Let me firstly thank you for accepting our humble just invitation for the podcast. And definitely, it's something new for us, me and Hamamsi, and I'm sure also for the audience that they will join today, something related to the economies. We have never talked about this. And definitely today we will have great values, and we're looking forward for it. So, just before we can
Let us
jump into the
welcome the
more
audience. Yeah.
yes, please. This is me. Just I'm saying hello just for technical challenges in case. So it was working. Thank you for the intro. So we have our friend and our brother Taibaji. He's sending all the best. Thank you
Hi,
so much, Taibaji, for
thank you for
sending
joining.
this. Yes. Our friend Ahmed Meshal, he's sending his greetings also. Hi
Hi,
all.
Ahmed.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Our friend Muhammad Mahfouz from Egypt. Hi to everyone. Thank
Hi,
you so
Muhammad.
much
Thank
for
you for
tuning in,
tuning in.
Muhammad. Our friend Marwa Ramadan looking forward for today's topic. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
for
tuning
tuning
in.
in.
Our great friend Alia Rafat. Why the screen is black or it's my problem? I think, guys,
Can the
please
is
reconfirm.
everybody seeing? Yes, everybody's seeing us, please. I think we have
So,
Jafar Jawad from Bahrain. Maybe
yes,
it's from Alia problem with Alia's internet or something.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, please feel free just to post, guys, if there is any technical challenge and we can fix it. And we have our friend Raymond, warm greetings from you from a grey,
From
wet, and cold Bristol in the UK. Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much,
tuning
our
in.
brother. I think we have great friends today. Sharif Hassanin, great
Hi,
to be
Sharif.
with you all. Thank you so much for being here. Jafar, he's confirming that it's good.
Okay, that's great.
So
That's
thanks.
great.
I think that we can
We're
start our episode.
it's safe, yes.
So again, Dr. Khaled, pleased to be here with us.
Thank you
It's
so
a
much.
pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
And we kept hearing, and I heard from you that there is something called a stagflation. So, just very curious to understand what is the stagflation.
Yes,
Okay.
everyone is clear about inflation and I think recession, but stagflation maybe it's not very clear to everyone.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for picking this topic on stagflation. I think it was smart of you to pick stagflation. Why? Because actually today we are living in stagflation. So it's extremely important for the audience, actually for the wider audience, to know what stagflation is, how to handle stagflation, and what's the way going forward to survive a stagflation period. Well, a textbook definition of stagflation is a combined word, and it is made up of two parts. The first part is stagnation. The second part is inflation. I'm sure we're all familiar with what stagnant is. Stagnant is the exact opposite of growth. So if we have a growing economy, the opposite of a growing economy is a stagnant economy, an economy that doesn't move, that does not grow. That's the definition of stagnant. Then inflation, we all know that inflation is associated with price increases in general, as described by the consumer price index. So I'm sure most of our audience are familiar with inflation and what inflation is. And they are also familiar with stagnation and what stagnation is. So today the term is when the two of them happen at the same time. So this is stagflation, and this is usually coupled with a very high level of unemployment and also about shrinking to the industrial throughput. As you know, there is also another term which is familiar in economy, and that is the CPI. The PMI. PMI is the Purchase Managers Index. There is also another measure where economists, when they try to measure how the economy is performing, they check with all the purchase managers about their ability to buy and the quantities they buy on every single month, month in, month out. So when the purchase managers index is going down, unemployment is going up, inflation is happening, while stagnation is around the corner, then this is described as stagflation. And unfortunately, what we're going through now, and that actually started more than a year ago, as the economists describe it, this is classic textbook stagflation.
Thank
That's
you.
very clear, I think, Doctor. And as Ahmed said, you have a way to explain it easily. I think it clicked in our minds now. What's stagflation? And Doctor, what led us to this stagflation from your point of view? And what happened? Why are we now in this stage of stagflation? And when do economies reach this period?
Okay, I'll just try to refresh our memories. 2-3 years back, and actually I would split this time into 3 parts: the pre-COVID-19, during the COVID-19, and post-COVID-19. Pre-COVID-19, there was an overall economic slowdown. So the world was still growing, but at a smaller pace. So that was a time prior to COVID. Stock market was doing okay. The stock exchange in general was stable. Inflation numbers were under control. Unemployment was okay, but the economic growth was slowing down. I'm talking about the whole world economy growing at between 1.5% to 2% only. So there was growth, but slowing down. Then came the COVID-19, and with COVID-19, what happened was that many of the economies locked down. They went into complete lockdown. Industrial output slowed down, and with that, supply dropped, demand dropped, and there was an overall chaos. All the economic measures were heading south. And most of the economists realized that this is bad for the economy. And that's why they started to open up a little bit. Even with strict countries like UK, for example, they opened up completely. During the past 2 years, and I'm talking about 2020 and 2021, there were 3 disruptives all over the world. The first one was the commodity price increases. That did not only start in 2022, so that actually started 2 years ago. So there was a global surge in commodity prices. The second thing was an energy crisis. The price of petroleum oil, prices of natural gas, and all the energy sources in general picked up significantly. Then the third thing was interruption in the supply chain. And actually, by interruption of the supply chain, here I'm talking about sometimes lack of containers. Many of the ports were locked down. It wasn't that easy to have access to raw material, for example. And here there is a very important point to realize and recognize, which is that now we're talking about availability was at risk, affordability was at risk, and accessibility as well. Because, for example, if I'm a manufacturer and I wanted to source certain raw material, like, for example, in the case of the car manufacturers in Germany, I'm talking about the chip. As you know, the chip crisis in China. They could not source the microchips needed for the car industry. There was a complete halt in the output of the German manufacturers. So if the product or if the raw material you need is available, that doesn't mean that you have access to it. Because first of all, it needs to be available and you need to have the financial capability to buy it. Then even though that it's available and you have the money to buy it, but there is no guarantee that you can have access to it, because sometimes because of the supply chain, you cannot get hold of a certain raw material that you need. All right? If you cut all of that, was actually characteristic of like a prelude for stagflation. So between 2021 and 2020 and 2021, those were the three disruptives that we all felt as the business community. Then comes the beginning of 2022 with the Russians invading Ukraine.
I think that there is some
there is some
technical.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
No worries. We'll come back into sending some greetings for our lovely audience till our Dr. Khaled come back. So we have our friend Jose. Cannot see you. Just a picture of full. I think that it's now working well. And please confirm, guys, if you can see us well. Our friend Aziz Abazi. Good evening. Greetings from Georgia. Great to see you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.
Dr. Khaled came back.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry for that.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So we said, I mean, throughout the past 2 years, we had a surge in commodity prices, and we had a surge in the energy cost, and that has actually impacted the cost of shipment and transportation from one place to the other. Then we got the supply chain interruptions. Then if you add to this the Russian-Ukraine war, that can actually tell you how critical it was for economies and manufacturers to source the raw material, the packaging material, to be able to produce anything to meet the demand of the whole world. It's very important to realize that post-COVID, people wanted to open up, people wanted to go out, they wanted to consume. So now we faced a very high demand across the board, while at the same time, there was not enough supply to meet that demand. On one side, people willing to open up, people want to travel like in the past, they wanted to consume, they want to get back to life, while manufacturers and producers could not meet that demand, and that has led to inflation. All right? So that's the inflation part. Talking about stagnation, what made stagnation happen is again the
I think there is a drop little bit.
Yeah.
No worries.
No worries.
We'll come back. Let's get it's back.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think we have great topic today, guys. So please engage with us regarding any question into your mind. I think we'll come back into your questions once you're done. We have our friend Ahmad Makram. I'm really impressed with this live. It looks nice and looking forward for the topic. Thank you so much for your great words, Ahmad. Our friend Alia Rafat, she's saying, got it now. Thank you so much for being here. I think it's working, definitely. Yes. Our friend Cigar.
Thank you, Cigar, for joining.
Thank you so much. I think we have the first question, and we'll come back to it once Dr. Khaled came back. Yes. We have our friend Ahmad Qasim. How can the current conflict affect on the stagflation? Definitely, it will be our first question in this episode. We'll come back to it.
I think he's talking about the war and how can it affect.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Dr. Khaled, welcome back.
Okay. Actually, if I want to just answer this question, how can the current conflict affect the stagflation? Actually, you're adding oil to fire. Because again, with that, I'm sure you know that there is interruption in the supply chain. People actually cannot source wheat from Russia or Ukraine, for example. So actually, you are putting more pressure on the supply side. You cannot supply like before. So that's one thing. And again, the demand is surging. So on one side, the supply is getting impacted while the demand is actually increasing post-COVID, as I said. So that's one thing. Second thing, commodity prices are increasing big time. with the energy costs increase, there is also cost in freight and dispatch. So shipment is also affected negatively with that, and the cost of insurance as well. Because now, and again, there is also this thing about moving money around. We all know that now the Russians are actually kicked out of the SWIFT system. So actually, if I am an importer in Egypt willing to source some of my products out of Russia, I cannot do that. I cannot transfer the money. That's one thing. And again, the cost of insurance is very high, even for Egypt. Let me pick the example of wheat, for example. Egypt cannot import wheat neither from Russia nor from the Ukraine. And now we have got to resort to more expensive sources like getting wheat from Europe or from North America, for example. And if you add to this the cost of freight, the cost of insurance, which has surged big time, you can imagine the challenges that the Egyptian government is facing today. And actually, they started to seriously remove the subsidies, the food, the bread subsidy in Egypt, which is going to be, which will have a lot of social repercussions if the current government dared to take a price increase to bread.
Thank you, Dr. Khaled, about this one. And I'm so curious just to ask you, with the current state that and the war that's happening in Ukraine and Russia, between Ukraine and Russia, uh, if you're a CEO of this region exactly, what could be the I would say the solution? Because I know that this political situation could affect the business drastically. What could be the ways? I know that you have great experience in that. What could be the ways to survive the business inside these two countries?
To tell you the truth, adaptability, because now adaptability became like a critical skill that all CEOs should have. And what do I mean by that? If I'm a country that is totally dependent on export, for example, then I've got to shift my business model from export and focus a lot more on domestic consumption. And actually, what helped China during the COVID-19 is that they already have a large market. We all know that China is the factory of the world. And the Chinese economy has always been designed to cater for export out of China. During COVID time, the Chinese economy kept growing. I mean, it wasn't impacted negatively. Why? Because they have local demand is so huge. They have 1.6 billion in population. So immediately they shifted their focus from exporting into local consumption. How did they do that? They reduced the interest rates. They encouraged the Chinese to move and consume and travel a lot. They encouraged them to buy homes by reducing the mortgage cost. And that's why they must be resilient, flexible, and adapt to the situation. If I'm a CEO, for example, today, I'm trying my very best to replace domestic raw material by the imported ones, because we know how challenging importing any raw material is. So I would work a lot more on developing the local suppliers, increasing my market share, going local vis-a-vis going global. Because you know what? For the past 20 years, all the economists have been promoting globalization. But actually, today, globalization cannot serve you. You need to act
localization.
true, very true. And you need to focus a lot more on sourcing your raw material locally, looking after your local consumers. And actually, globalization or actually exporting comes at a later stage. If I would satisfy my local consumer base first, I'll be happy with that. And we started seeing many of the countries putting export ban. And that's a big joke, because in the past, people used to put some restrictions on trade because they were worried about international markets impacting the local producers. Now it's the other way around. They don't want the local producers to export. They want to satisfy the local need
Local
first.
market.
Okay. And actually, we started seeing Russia doing this, Ukraine doing that, and actually Egypt. I'm sure that you have been reading or hearing the news lately that Egypt has put some bans on exporting, especially food and culture products. So now people are acting and actually thinking local a lot more than global. That's what I would
Yeah.
do if I were a CEO working in Russia on Ukraine.
Thank you, Khaled. I think that you just triggered one thing, which is that the current state that most governments should really encourage the localization, and this is in terms of economies definitely. So as you said that just it's not only about exporting. You can encourage the I would say the localization, how we can develop your suppliers, how can you move from a global into local wise, because most companies, I think after COVID-19, most companies they realized that especially supply chain is very disruptive at any certain point of time, that you could get out of the market and your business will not be sustainable totally,
Yeah.
because your supply chain network has a global network. So the more you focus on localizing, I do believe, the more that you will be more sustainable inside the market itself. Because again, companies they were looking into globalization because of they want to reduce the supply chain costs, they want to centralize their stocks, they want to reduce as more as they can for their margin sake of margin. But now they moved from a centralization into decentralization. It came with a cost, but and it also dilute their margin. But at a certain point, they can just compromise this for their future. I think I can echo your voice about this one. Thank you so much for this amazing story. So, if you
Actually,
allow me,
I
sure.
think there's one question regarding what's the best investment that these days, as you all know, gentlemen, this
Yeah.
is like a very tough time. It's a VUCA environment. And during VUCA environment, people prioritize the basic needs. And by the basic needs, I'm talking about three things in particular. It's healthcare, it's education, and food and beverage. And actually, it will vary. So the best investment is one of these three. But if I'm talking in specific about this part of the world, because we have food shortage. So food shortage is a big threat, to, whether it's to Egypt or the Middle East in general. And during the lockdown, you need to at least source your food domestically.
Mm,
So I believe the best thing for the governments of the Middle East is focus on food and beverage, and in particular talk about agri industry and food business. It's the two things. How can you have um, accelerate your agriculture throughput, and how can you turn that into industry? So for me, the best thing is agriculture-based industry. So it's the
mm,
food industry and agribusiness in general. I know that people used to look at agriculture as an old-fashioned, and people thought
Yes.
that to be modernized, you need to move from agriculture into industrialization. But you
mm,
see, the time has changed, and now all governments, I'm talking all governments, need to be a lot more focused on agriculture and on food industry based on your own agriculture. So that's a quick reply to one of the questions mentioned here.
thank
That's
you.
great. Well, I think it's part of the localization that we're talking about, that
Yes.
countries to start to depend on themselves and not to export or not to import from the other countries, especially with all the rising costs that you're talking about, insurance and all this. So yes, definitely great answer. I echo your voice here.
Thank you, Khaled. If you can just allow us, we'll come back into our audience. We
Yes.
have our friend Mahmoud. He's saying good evening from Riyadh. Very important topic, especially nowadays.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. I think we have another question from our friend Jose. He's asking how lack of transportation works. I think that he is talking about the freight and the lack of
So,
containers.
yes.
Containers, yeah, this
Yeah,
problem that
because you
we're
see,
facing.
again, I said we have three challenges. Number one is commodity price increases. Number two, energy cost increase. Number three is supply chain interruption.
Mm,
And that's accessibility. That's the accessibility part. So sometimes, actually, whatever you want to buy is available, and you have the money to source it, but actually, you don't have accessibility to it. I'll just mention one example regarding sesame, because I buy a lot of sesame. Sesame is
Yeah.
usually available in Ethiopia or in Sudan,
mm,
but and we have the money to buy sesame, but as you know, there is like military coup in Sudan, and there is like friction all over Ethiopia. So even though that sesame is available in Ethiopia and Sudan, and we have the money to buy it, but I don't have access to it. So that's
Yeah.
one part.
mm,
Second thing, and it's a global thing. If you remember the ship that blocked Suez Canal, remember that
mhm.
case?
Yes.
That
Yes.
Yes.
was maybe few months back. So again, it's just one simple ship that drifted along the Suez Canal, and it causes the canal to be blocked. And again, there was like a long queue of container ships awaiting to pass by the canal. So again, you cannot
Possibility.
blame anyone here, but again, it's a supply chain interruption. If you have a port closure or lack of containers, for example, or for example, port going on strike, port labor going on strike.
Yeah.
Again, it's not about availability or affordability. There is an important element called accessibility, and start to impact the business big time now. Because I know, for example, that the world is not only short in number of containers, it's also short in number of ships. And the reason for this is the unavailability of steel in general, because there is like shortage in steel ore, and a result of the lockdown during COVID as well, steel factories did not operate enough. So there is less ships than needed and less containers than needed.
Yeah.
That's why there is an interruption in the supply chain in general.
Thank you, Khaled, so much for this amazing answer. I would say, if you allows, just we'll come back into the next comment. Our friend Ashraf Aziz, he's saying, "Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for the effort, educating us truly. Thank you
Thank you,
so much."
Ash. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you. Our friend Ahmad Ali Khan, very productive discussion. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. I think we have another question from our friend Ahmad Qasim. How
Mm.
can companies survive in the stagflation time?
Okay, an extremely important question. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for this question. Actually, we were planning to discuss that question today.
Yes.
Okay, you see, Ahmed, um, price increases is inevitable. So it's a fact of life that all companies will have to take price increases. But we're just trying to delay the inevitable. It's going to happen whether we like it or not, but we need to play it smart. And before we decide to take a price increase, there are 5 steps that we need to do to avoid or delay price increases. To start with, you need to start by forward buying deals as much as you can, because you know that if you buy now is better than buying tomorrow, and if you buy tomorrow, that's better than buying the day after tomorrow. All right, so the smart ones, they have like a proper business forecast, and they know how to spot their buys. So if you know that prices will increase, 2 things happen during inflation time: the value of the currency erodes. The value of the currency erodes. Your $1 today can buy you something. To buy the same thing tomorrow, it's going to cost you a
Maybe
dollar,
less.
dollar and a half, for example. So you better buy today. That's one thing. Second thing, you know that the price of commodities will definitely increase tomorrow and the day after. And that's opposite to cash is king, because you know in the past, even our parents used to educate us that cash is king. Today, cash is not king. Cash is a curse, because if you keep cash today, the value of your cash will drop tomorrow. But if you have commodities or products today, their value will increase tomorrow. All right. So the first thing that we need to take to survive stagflation, number one, try to have like forward buying deal as much as you can. That's one thing. Second thing, you need to go through cost optimization across the board. Whether cost optimization in the cost of your supply chain, how can you increase productivity? How can you increase efficiency? So for a business owner, you need to challenge every single line across the P&L. In your P&L, you have the direct material costs, you have discounts and allowances, trade
Trades.
deals, anything that you should do away from people, of course, because during that
Yes.
time, actually, you need to look after your people. So I'm not here discussing layoffs or people optimization. I'm talking about how can we enhance productivity and efficiency. For example, if there were certain things that used to do in-house, maybe this is the time to consider outsourcing, if outsourcing is cheaper, for example. All right. So the second thing you need to do is to challenge your cost structure
Cost.
and actually appoint one owner for every line for the cost structure. Second thing is mix improvement. What do I mean by mix improvement? If you are managing a company, you don't make the same level of profitability from every single item you have. So you better
Definitely.
focus on the ones that generate more profit for the
Profit.
business. And again, there is also some productivity projects on the product itself. Like, for example, when you source a local raw material vis-a-vis importing ones. So if you can have backward integration, for example, if you have certain raw material that you are importing before, try to lobby with some industry partners or sister companies, try to streamline your operation. In a nutshell, you need to exhaust all the cost optimization or rationalization projects before you take a price increase. So the fifth thing you can do is take price increases, and you need to do that very tactfully and progressively.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that, first of all, you need to be selective on that, because you are not targeting everybody by every product you sell. Some people are more sensitive to price increases vis-a-vis others, because
Mhm.
as you all know, now the socioeconomic classes is divided into three parts. The first part is have lots, those who have enough money, those who have abundance of money. For them, they're not that price sensitive. Then you have the middle class, or what we call the haves. So they have enough money to make ends meet. Then you have the have nots, those who actually struggle
Yes.
to earn their living and make ends meet. All right. So some people are more sensitive than others on price increases, and you need to be actually very cautious about it. So that's one thing. Sometimes you can resort to price decrease, because again, for the have lots, everybody's looking for value. I know that this might surprise some of our audience, because the definition of value would vary from the rich people, from the definition of value for the poor people. For the
Mhm.
rich people, when they buy a Rolex,
I think also,
We lost Khaled for a while. Let's take some of our
yes,
lovely audience comments.
yes, sure.
Yeah.
So we'll jump into our friend Jose. He's saying one ship. I think Khaled, he came back. Dr.
Yes.
Khaled,
Yes. Welcome back.
we cannot hear you, Khaled. I think you're
Oh,
muted.
you're muted, I think. Yeah.
We cannot hear you.
Not yet. No.
No problem. Okay, okay, we'll be
Yeah.
waiting for you.
Okay.
No
Okay.
problem at all. So we have Jose. He's saying one ship cannot change the cost from 110 to 100, where the containers are. They didn't disappear. I totally agree with you, Jose, in this point. But I think what happened due to the we had this call, if you remember, also Hamamsi, with Sarah and our friend before. I think one of the challenges that the spike in the cost that happened in the containers, that
Yes.
the unavailability of the containers, because of the law of supply and demand, they were not in equilibrium. I think Dr. Khaled came back.
yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we
Yes.
can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay, okay, great. I was just trying to explain the principle or the concept of value, because everybody's after value, but the definition of value would vary from the rich and the poor. So for
Mm,
the rich man who buys a Rolex watch, he believes that he's making a good investment, and that's a good value, because for him, that's a hedge for his money, because he knows that with time the value of his Rolex will definitely increase. And it's the same thing if you are buying a Mercedes car. It's a very expensive one, but you know that this is a good.
Value for money. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's dropped again,
Yeah.
but
Having
no
some
problem.
difficulties,
So
but no problem.
if you allow me, I'll come back also to the same question
Let's
for
go back to the
Jose.
same question of the
Yes,
containers. Yes.
for Jose, I think it's the game of the demand and supply, and due to the unavailability, I would say, in the containers, and that has been said by Khalid, even the ships itself, there was a spike in the demand. And if you put yourself in the place of any freight forwarder, or any just shipping lines, or the place itself, if you have like a high demand, you will have the power and the ability to increase your cost and to increase your price in that way. So that's why this the spike happens. And at the same time, also just cycling or recycling the containers itself, it takes a long time. I would say that the recycling itself takes time to have it like that, that way. That's why this spike that happened in the cost itself, it happened that way. Just regarding what will happen in the future, honestly, just once this equilibrium happened again in the demand and the supply, I think by this way again there will be a competition between shipping lines again, and there will be a game in just the price. I would say price game. Then we will come back
Prices will
into
start
this.
to stabilize, but don't think this will. I think this will take time, especially we went again into a war and things are still not stable. Maybe
Sure,
not this year, I believe.
sure.
Yes.
So welcome, Khaled, again.
Okay, thank you so
Welcome
much.
back.
Sorry for that.
Not at
Uh,
all, not at all.
so
No
I was
issue.
explaining the concepts of value for the rich man, and for the poor man, because he has limited cash, or the cash outlay he has is so much limited. So for him, value is the cash outlay itself. So can I buy a loaf of bread for 50 piasters? Can I buy this particular cloth for 10 pounds, etc.? Everybody's looking for value. So should we as manufacturers, again, for example, the value for a diapers user, if I'm a rich man, I'll buy the value pack, okay, because I think that I'm making a good deal on this. When I buy a pack of diapers, which is 100 diapers, for example, I'm making better money per diaper. However, for the poor man, he can only buy one diaper or a small pack because
Yes.
that's what's suitable for his cash outlay.
Yeah.
So if I'm a manufacturer, I need to know my consumers pretty well, and I know the definition of value for them, and I actually hammer on that. So for example, if I'm producing shampoo, for example,
Yeah,
because
I
I
was
know
just going. Sorry to interrupt you, doctor. I was just going to interrupt you about this with this specific example. When they introduced the small sachet for the shampoo, I think it was very clever to meet this consumers, to meet the consumers who cannot afford only for one
Bottle.
washing, one
you
wash.
see,
It was a great hit.
you see,
Yeah.
even though price per milliliter is more expensive on the sachet, all right? It
Yeah.
is
Yes.
more expensive. But for the poor guy, that's a good value because he knows
Yes.
that he can buy it for £1, for
Consumption.
example.
Exactly.
Okay. However, at the same time, for that shampoo full-time user, he would buy the big pump, which is like
Yes.
750 ml, all right? And he's paying maybe £50 for this. And he believes that he made a good buy out of this, which that's the definition of value for him. So everybody's looking for value. However, it's very important to know that consumers react differently to price increases. So not all of them respond to price increase in the same way. Okay, and actually, I think that topic of diapers will be very interesting for our audience to spend some time explaining this. We know that Pampers is the most expensive diaper, all right? So how would people react to a price increase of Pampers, for example? If I'm a rich man, I wouldn't worry at all. If I'm using Pampers for my kid, I will keep on using Pampers. All right. However, I'll be looking for the best value in Pampers, the big bulk Pampers, because I'm buying it in anyway. So I better get a good deal out of buying Pampers. However, for the middle class shopper who used to buy Pampers, then he might actually shift from Pampers to a cheaper brands, or you can move into system usage, like buy Pampers because Pampers is premium and they can use it out of home. However, I can buy a cheaper brand for my kid whenever he's at home. All right. Then, if I'm a poor guy, I can drop diapers altogether and then get back into napkins or el kafula like in the past.
Yes.
So people don't respond the same way. Actually, their response would vary by category and by the socioeconomic class and by their economic viability, whether they can afford something or not. And that's the biggest threat we have here.
Yeah, definitely. If you allow me, if you allow me.
Please, please.
I
Thank
think,
you.
Dr. Khaled, the 5 steps that you were mentioning it, I think that you should write it in a real book.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
like what you said when you were speaking, and I think this is that implying on the quality of leadership when it comes to just focusing on your profit or focusing on your margins. And some companies, they don't compromise on that. I remember what you're saying, that don't touch people. Don't
Yes,
touch
of
this
course.
inside your P&L overheads.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
lay off. And you give it from all aspects. It's not only one aspect, because you take it from the downstream and upstream. So most the companies, when they are under pressure of just achieving their margins, the easiest ways that they can take, it's taking a price increase, regardless what's happening. And regardless which the product segmentation, how it looks like, the price index on the channel itself, how it looks like, regardless. And they end up with spending more and more and more when they have this price increase, that just for fancy P&Ls, they spend more and more and more money in the trade, just investment, just compromise. And when it comes to reality, you will see that margins got diluted more, because some, just, I don't want to say bad decision, but it's unstudied decisions, that people, that they take it quickly, just price increase. And this is, as you said, that it's
And
implying on.
yes, yes, and
Sure, go
again
ahead.
the same as you said. These two things, price increase and laying off people. Again, they get to see that, for example, they lost a lot of talent as they take this, and a part of time of crisis they take. But as Mr. Khaled said, embrace your people during that time and embrace the talent that you have, because they are going to pass you through these hard times, and maybe you lose some experience that you cannot gain back, even if you get other people from other companies, but they don't have the experience of the culture of the company that you're working in, and that may take them like 1 or 2 years to adapt with everything that's happened. So definitely was great steps, and thank you for sharing with us all this great knowledge.
See, it's very important for all businesses, definitely to protect their gross margin. I mean, there's nothing wrong trying as a CEO or as a general manager to protect your margin. However, again, there is a huge watch out here that while we're getting into stagflation, markets are actually.
I think we have a drop again,
Drop
little
again.
bit.
Yeah, let's take quick comments till
Sure.
Dr. Khaled is back with us.
So we will jump into our friend. No, but we have now Dr. Khaled came back.
Yes, yes, welcome back.
Unmute Dr. Khaled. Unmute Dr. Khaled. We cannot hear you. No problem. So till Dr. Khaled come back, let's
Yeah,
come into our friends. So we have Raymond. He's saying the Suez Canal blockage and increasing Russian airspace closure shows how fragile the supply chain, transportation infrastructure is. There seems to be very little flexibility and adaptability to use alternative route and solution without.
the
Uh,
airlines, I think, or airline.
yes,
Yeah,
definitely, 100% with you, Dr. Raymond. We'll be waiting for Khaled. You can hear. We
we
cannot hear you.
cannot hear you. Yeah,
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 we'll,
yeah.
we'll be waiting for you.
Network
No, no, no problem.
yes.
So um we have also our friend Rooney, our friend Rooney.
Ronnie, our friend from California Garden. Thank you,
Yeah,
Ronnie,
this.
for joining, and it's so nice to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rooney, for tuning in. Our friend Muhammad Atiyah, he's saying, in principle, welcome to the great economic man, Professor Khaled Akl. I would like to brief summary of the most important challenges facing large companies in light of the condition of the coronavirus and the war between Ukraine
So we
and
have a
Russia.
question
Thank
here.
you. Yes, thank you. Dr. Khaled,
Yes.
we
Yeah,
can hear you now.
back in time.
Okay. I think there was one question regarding what's the biggest threat that any business is having these days. Actually,
Yeah,
the biggest threat is business interruption, because actually we are running a business, we are getting some input, we do a process, and we're expecting some output. So anything that can cause business interruption is a big threat, whether it is the availability of raw and pack material,
Mhm.
or power shortage or inavailability of labor or inability to export, for example. Anything that can cause business interruption is a big threat. I remember very carefully that the simple toothpaste actually includes 89 different ingredients. I know that this will sound like a surprise to many of our audience today. Imagine that any of these ingredients, any one of these ingredients is unavailable or out of stock, that can cause Unilever to stop producing toothpaste, for example. So anything that can cause business interruption is a threat to me, whether it's a power shortage, it's the absenteeism of a particular labor, or inavailability of raw material, or if I'm having my sales force getting COVID-19 and they are unable to go out there in the street and sell the products. So anything that causes business interruption. Yeah, I was just saying something of interest, which is that gross margin is important because that's a measure for how healthy the business is. And of course, we should all strive to protect the gross margin. There is nothing wrong with that. However, because we are getting into stagflation, and during stagflation, many of the markets will actually contract. They will actually shrink. So it's very important to protect your your market share as well. Market share as well.
Market share, yes.
Because here we need to think about the three different elements of growth. Consistency of growth, that's one thing. Profitability of growth, and more importantly, how competitive we grow. And by competition, because we don't want to be obsessed by protecting our margin to the extent that we lose our market share. Because again, one day this will be over. So you want this when it's over, that you are still holding your market share. To the contrary, you actually improved your market share. Because it takes a lot more cost and money to get back to the previous market share.
That's will take me actually to a question that came up to my mind now: how to protect your market share. And during this time, also people tend to cut the marketing budget, or they don't want to spend. So how to make that?
You see, your consumers are not stupid. It's very important to realize that one day this crisis will be over. All right, and as a business, you must be concerned with three people actually. With your suppliers, because it's very important for your suppliers to see you a good customer for them. Like you need to pay them on time, you need to be very punctual with them, you need to cooperate with them. So they need to see you supported. Number two, your own people. Your people need to see you, how you react to these tough times. Are you getting into salary cuts or layoffs, or are still looking after your own people? Number three is your customers. Customers are also important because you simply produce and sell to customers. Are you cutting on your investment, the investment that you do with your customers, or not? So it's very important that people see how you behave, whether it is consumers, customers, suppliers, or even your own people, and you need to act responsibly. Talking about market share, how can you protect your market share? To tell you the truth, if I market here today, I'll have so many challenges because the media is changing significantly. For a marketeer, you don't know whether to advertise online or in store. You want to go on billboards on TV. You want to spend in Carrefour or doing promotions or consumer activities. You need to be very targeted. So during the lockdown, for example, you need to focus a lot more advertising with e-commerce platforms. You need to be available where your shoppers shop. That's what really matters. So if your shoppers are staying at home, browsing on Amazon or Jumia, and that's where they do the transaction, you need to be there. If they are watching TV, you need to be there. If they're out there during the traffic time, you need to be on billboards, but you definitely need to chase where they are. It's very important to realize that in order for a transaction to happen, there are three important moments of truth. There is the first moment of truth when the consumer goes to a supermarket to buy your products, whether he finds it or not. So that's the first moment of truth. There is the second moment of truth when he buys the products and goes home to use it, and whether it met his expectations or not. And before these two moments of truth, there is the zero moment of truth, where actually he's watching TV or browsing on Facebook, and actually you meet him with an advertising for the product that you are trying to sell him. So in
Yes.
order for the first moment of truth to happen, there needs to be a zero moment of truth. And in order for
Mhm.
the second moment of truth to happen, there should be a first moment of truth.
Love the philosophy. I like
Yes.
the philosophy
Yes.
and
Yes.
these steps. I don't know what to say, but really the stories that you were saying, Dr. Khaled, it's really enlightening to us. And the way that you look at it from just not only from a customer, consumer, from the business, from each side is really marvelous. Thank you so much for this great storytelling, and
Exactly.
that opens our eyes. So, if you allow me, I think that we have a question.
Please.
Our friend Jose is saying how you qualificate your sales people when market are shrinking.
Okay. Well, it's very important to realize how important your salespeople are. It's very important that they feel that you look after them. I think this is the time you make their life easier. So, for example, you need to save the time they spend on loading, offloading, etc. For example, one of the techniques is to do night loading so that when they
Mm.
come to the warehouse or the distribution center in the morning, their trucks are ready for them to drive and go and hit the market. So that's one
Mhm,
thing. Incentivizing them, and I mean rewarding them fairly, training them so that they can
Mm.
actually be more productive. Because at the end of the day, the salespeople they get rewarded for the sales they make, and you need these
mhm,
sales to be consistent and sustainable as well. And to do that, you need to work on two things. It's their willingness to sell and their capability to sell.
Yeah.
Willingness, because you need to show them how important the role they are playing is. So you need to give them some self-esteem, because again, if you have the best product in the world, you have the world's greatest marketing plan, without selling, that is rubbish. So it's very
Yes.
important for them to know the importance of the role they are playing. So you need to give them that kind of self-esteem. They need to know that you appreciate and value the challenges that they are going through. Because actually, the salespeople are more exposed than anybody else to catch COVID-19. Because you see,
Yes.
mhm.
you are sitting in
The
your
front
office,
lines.
yeah, you are less exposed to COVID-19, but the salesman would actually go out there. He works in the field, he interacts with so many different people of every single day. And that's why they are more exposed to COVID-19 or to challenges in general than the office-based jobs. So you need to give them appreciation and fair reward as well.
Thank you, Khaled, so
So
much
much.
for that. Yes, I think this will bring us to another question, Khaled, from that point also when it comes to the people. So, especially when we spoke about the stagflation, what could be the consumer behavior in that time when there is a
Yeah.
stagnant inflation from your experience?
Okay, definitely consumers focus on the basics and on the necessities. So this is not the time to go for luxury items. Consumers usually focus on now, on today. You
Mm,
remember during the COVID-19 time, when people went out there fighting over a roll of toilet paper, for example,
mhm,
because for them,
Yes.
a roll of toilet paper was more important than anything else.
mhm,
Actually, I remember actually my daughter at the time was studying in the UK, and she was there, and she explained to me exactly what happened. She needed any paper tissues to sneeze, all right? And when she couldn't find any, she simply got a paper from her notebook, because that was
Mhm.
the only paper that
mhm,
she managed to get hold of. So
Yeah.
mhm,
during that time, that was what really matters. So consumer behavior during tough time is actually they focus on the necessities.
mhm,
I remember carefully in Egypt during the Arab Spring, the sales of food items almost got doubled, and the
Yeah.
sales of the non-food items shrank significantly. So this is the
mhm,
time you focus on the core SKUs, on the absolute necessities. I know that, for example, companies working in non-food items, they struggle a lot during that time, vis-a-vis companies working with food in general. And the consumer, because he has limited cash, they will definitely prioritize the absolute necessity.
Thank
Definitely.
you, Khaled.
Thank you so
Khaled,
much.
I keep saying that just time is flying as usual with these great values. I would like to thank you really for your great time and
Thank
your
you.
amazing stories. Honestly, I didn't understand, or just I didn't know what is the stagnant inflation. Maybe I heard about it, but the way that you describe it and mention it through your amazing storytelling was really enlightening.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Definitely, it was a pleasure having you today. Hopefully,
Yes,
that we can host you more and more and more. Give us
I
like
hope so, because there
enlightening
are
sessions.
values, and really we had a lot of fun. And I think all the
Thank you, Ahmed.
audience, from the interaction from all our lovely audience also, and the questions that came in. So we're blessed to have you today, and
Thank you so
thank
much.
you so much for your time, and thank you for all our lovely audience, really.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Thank you so much.
Th-
Much
Thank
appreciated.
you,
Thank
Khaled.
you so much.
Thank you, Khaled. Thank you,
Thank
Stay
guys.
safe,
Have a
gentlemen. Stay safe,
thank you.
gentlemen. Thank you.
thank
Thank you.
you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks.